we all have worries about South Africa. There's load shedding and there's bad service delivery and there's corruption and there's inequality. But when you talk about conquering apartheid and colonialism and those injustices which remain into the present, the release of Janusz Walus, and at the time as we talk, we haven't had time to study the judgment in depth, and those are legal questions. But the symbolism of the country on its knees and those who effectively perpetrated apartheid or who perpetrated the murder of those who sought a new society, walking free. There's something about that moment which says to me, like we're at a new moment of the crisis where the forces of apartheid are smiling, and the forces trying to defeat apartheid are up against bigger challenges than they have ever faced before.
Well, I wrote a column when I still had a column in the Business Day about this matter. And I argued then that if Janusz Walus met the criteria for parole, such parole should be granted to him, and immediately thereafter he should proceed to hell. That's what I said in that column.
Sure.
And in the column I was doing two things. I was dealing with the narrow legalities.
Sure.
And in terms of the narrow legalities and how we wrote the relevant laws, it seems to me that he did meet the criteria. But when I say that after he's granted parole, he must proceed straight to hell, I'm dealing with a much broader issue of the meaning of Walus. What is Walus? Now, you know, even those white people who are not right-wing, there is a way, direct or indirect, in which they benefited from the murder of Chrisani. Remember, this was not the killing of an individual or a communist. What Walus tried to kill is an idea. So that the idea does not mutate to become a reality. In other words, what I mentioned earlier, the idea of a new society that is antithetical in its class, race, gender, economic, and other relations to apartheid society. But this is what Walus tried to kill. What the conference of the ANC must decide is whether it is going to be an ally to Walus. In this sense, one of the problems we face to this day is the problem of coloniality. And allied to that problem is the fact that too many of our leaders on the African continent, including this country, have become allies to coloniality. So one of the things this 55th conference of the ANC must decide is whether the ANC will continue being an ally of coloniality, and therefore an ally to what someone like Walus stands for. I don't want to say much about the Constitutional Court itself. I think we still need to engage in conversations which problematize, firstly, the idea of a Constitutional Court. Secondly, the idea of constitutionalism. Because what we must remember is that things such as democracy, things such as constitutionalism, things such as a country are stories. Now, Chimamanda Ngozi warns against the dangers of the single story. Now, it seems to me that when we tell the story of our democracy, we tell a single story. And it seems to me when we tell the story of South Africa is a story, is a single story. And there are so many stories that are either ignored or suppressed. So there are many stories about our democracy. And some of these stories are about other democracies. In other words, as we talk about our democracy as a story, we should be able to tell other democratic stories, particularly when it comes to the need to imagine and reach for alternatives to the current idea of what constitutes democracy. So Janusz Walus, ironically, kills Chris Hani because those of his ilk and he himself, Chris believed that people like Chris Hani must die so that the world must remain democratic. That is one of the tragic ironies of what Walus did. And so the ANC in this conference must decide whether it is going to be an ally to Walus and those of his ilk.